What's up, guys? Welcome to Nutmegged, the podcast where a Yank and a Brit talk about the beautiful game from across the pond. Of course, I am Faisal, representing the UK, currently in Dubai. And of course, I've got with me Andrew. Andrew, representing the Stars and Stripes. How are you today, bud?
I'm good. I'm actually doing a lot better at representing the Stars and Stripes than our actual U.S. men's national team was in the Copa America, which we'll talk about real soon.
I think the teams we're representing are going to have an interesting look into this episode. But we're looking forward to getting stuck into this one. Of course, we are in the middle of two very big tournaments for us as individuals, but also for the world of football as well. We have the Copa America in the US, and it's big. We know what's happening there at the moment. We'll have a little breakdown about performances, who's winners, some of the losers, and break that down as well. Naturally, it is, of course, the Euros as well and European football. So we will talk a bit more about England specifically and performances, if you can call it performances at the moment, and that side of stuff. And then, of course, we'll break down a few of the things that are happening, trending topics we have at the moment. We're also talking about Manchester United because there's been interesting developments. So we're looking forward to breaking that down. And of course, we've got our Nutmegged of the week as well. So excited to get stuck in. Let's start off with, I think you're ready to go. You're raring to go. Let's
rip the Band-Aid off.
Let's go for it. Break down the Copa America for us to get stuck in.
Yes, Copa America. We talked about it in the last episode. So it's essentially the Euros, but for the Americas. So like South America, Central-ish America, North America. So you'll have the likes of Canada, you have Argentina, the United States, Uruguay, Colombia, Brazil, Costa Rica, Venezuela. So a variety of different clubs from the different Americas. Similar structure to the Euros. You got your group stage, then you go off, and then you have your knockout rounds. We are now entering the knockouts. We've officially had all of the group match games for the Copa America, so we know which countries are moving on to the knockouts. Unfortunately, the USA is not one of them, even though we made it, was it to the semis or pretty far in the last tournament? So we were, I think, one of the last four teams, perhaps, and expected more of the same. And honestly, we expected more. So a lot of pundits were talking about how U.S. soccer is now in a good place. We have a good core group of players who are fairly younger because we have this missing generation is what they talked about. So like, you know how the USA did not make the 2018 World Cup. And then there was this whole drama of like, yeah, we just don't have that generation that is right above our current generation. So that's why we missed out on it, which is just one lame excuse that they had anyway. But now that generation that was missing is kind of fading off because they are out and would have been if we had that generation anyway because of their age. Now, that younger generation who is supposed to be our golden generation, which is just a term that's kind of tossed around loosely anyway, they are now aging into maturity, like where they're all in their peaks. They're all playing in Europe now. So we really should have a pretty solid core group of players. And like I was saying, all these pundits were saying, all right, we're now in a good spot. So we should probably be making a run inside of the Copa and maybe hunting for some trophies at this point. On top of that, running into 2026, where the USA is a co-host of the World Cup. So talking about the Copa as a dress rehearsal, because this is also being co-hosted in the United States. So then making sure all of the fan organization is in place, the stadiums are how they need to be, which is a conversation for another day because things have not gone as smoothly as people would have thought, which I guess is maybe it's a red flag, but at least the red flag's coming early. So maybe we can try to step stuff up for the World Cup. Again, that's something we'll probably talk about as we do gear up toward the 2026 World Cup, but a future conversation. So with Copa now entering into the knockouts, let's talk specifically Copa first, just the tournament in general. Then I'll start yelling about the U.S. men's national team and the state of U.S. soccer, which I have talked about before and how it's kind of in a sucky place. And I think these results just show that what I've been saying is true. And we'll talk about the coach as well, which has been the hot topic all around the soccer world, at least the US soccer world. But first, let's talk about the groups real quick. Who's made it through? I'll talk about some of the people that I think are winners, some of the losers, and then I'll throw it over to you because I know the Copa is not as big in Europe. And like the Euros are still big over here, which again, we talked about last time too, it's just marketed differently. So the Euros are like this cool, exciting thing, which you have usually like some of the best players in the world playing over there, of course, in the different European countries. Not as high of quality, but still some good quality in Copa. And again, I really think it's just marketing. Like if you market Copa more, you could get more of the world watching some of these players. Because like you have Messi playing for Argentina, you have Brazil playing. Like some of the big heavy hitting teams are still in international action in a tournament where you win silverware and it matters. So let's break down groups real fast. So we have only 4 groups. We have Group A, Argentina, Canada, Chile, Peru. Let's talk about that group real fast. And that is technically your group of death. There are kind of 2 that are actually really difficult. So it's Group A and then Group D. But first, this one portion of the group of death. So Argentina, everyone expected Argentina to advance. They're one of the favorites to win the tournament, and they have shown up. They have 9 points out of 9 points. So they are going through. The other interesting group, so CONMEBOL, another stupid acronym that happens in soccer, that is like the confederation or grouping of countries that play against each other for world qualifying events. So the USA is in CONMEBOL, and we always talk about when we go into major tournaments, if there is a team from CONMEBOL that makes it through. So the USA is usually one of them. Not this time. There are 2 though, which is exciting. And Canada is one of them. So Canada finishes second with 4 points, which was a little bit surprising. Canada wasn't slated to make it through. They're technically, I guess I say this, talent is a loose term, but not as talented as the US in terms of the players that they have on their roster. However, they did bring in a new manager for this, and it was a individual, Jesse Marsh, who was in the running for the US men's national team job, but he came out in an interview later on and said it wasn't handled correctly, like the process of his interviews did not go well. So unfortunately, we didn't get him. We had Blair Halter, as we all know, but he ends up being the manager of Canada and doing good stuff, getting out of the group, out of a very difficult group that people talked about was going to be very difficult. So Canada finishing in second. Chile, the other team that was supposed to make some waves, ending up not making it past Canada. So they're out. Peru is out. Group B, Venezuela. They're looking pretty solid. 9 points out of 9. So maybe a little bit more of a surprise, but do have a quality squad that will always cause some problems. So always a team that's interesting for the U.S. to go up against. Then we have Ecuador and Mexico. Mexico missing out on 4 points with Ecuador having 4 points, but goal differential ending up making Ecuador pull through. Jamaica not making it with 0 points. Tough for Jamaica. Group C, Uruguay. They were another of the teams that were supposed to be favorites and doing quite well. They ended with 9 points. They beat the U.S., and then we all know how that match went, where we only we needed to win, but then we relied on Bolivia, and it just didn't work out because we didn't make it out of this group. But then continuing in this group, Panama, Team USA should have beaten and ranked much higher above. They end up getting out of the group with 6 points. USA on 3, not making it through, and then Bolivia not making it with 0 points. And we anticipated Bolivia, one of the lowest ranked teams in this. And our final group, we have Colombia, another one of the favorites who have been playing some great soccer as of late. They are top of the group with 7 points. Then we have Brazil in second place with 5 points. So a little bit surprising for Brazil not being as dominant as some suspected. Then we have Costa Rica not making it through on 4 points. So tough for them. And then Paraguay at the bottom of Group D. So Group D, like I said, your other group of death, having Colombia, Brazil, and Costa Rica. Pretty solid team. So that's how all of this shakes out. So again, I want to throw it to you as I kind of laid the land for all of this and get your thoughts on what the perspective is now that Copa is happening as a European. And then like, what are your thoughts in general on the tournament?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there is definitely a marketing issue here. I suppose it's difficult to compete with the Euros. I mean, marketing a tournament at the same time as the Euros when a lot of the European eyes is on the Premier League in terms of footballers playing the Premier League, etc. But there's definitely some incredible footballers on show here. And you've spoken about a couple of them. I mean, the main one, of course, is Lionel Messi. You have the whole Brazil squad. Everyone in that Brazil squad is incredible. Certain players, certain managers I was looking at as well, at Bielsa from who's Leeds' old manager, doing the Uruguayan team. So that's an interesting one. And I think if you definitely watch Premier League, you know how interesting it is Bielsa as in his management style. So I'd be interested to see how Uruguay get on. And then of course, as you already mentioned, it was Jesse Marsch as well, who of course was also Leeds manager as well, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
So it's interesting to see these Premier League managers as well performing well. And like I said, I'm always a fan of just international football in general. I love to see like teams like Panama, Bolivia, these teams play football because they play a great sort of brand of football, attacking football, which sometimes, and we'll get into it, the Euros hasn't really sort of compared to. So it's really great to see these teams. And I think there definitely needs to be more marketing around there. I don't know, maybe I'm pushing something out there, but maybe it needs to be a different time of the year. Maybe you personally, it's difficult to compete with the Euros with the amount of footballers on show. But yeah, and also I think the timings are different as well, potentially the UK, I know for sure in Dubai. So it kind of depends on how that is. And I think that is also a difficulty. I do remember watching the final, I think, Argentina versus, was it Brazil in the final, I think, of the Copa America? It might have been. Like a late one, but I had to watch it because it was the Copa America. It was the final. It's a tournament that you've got to see the later stage of because it's going to be some incredible football. So I'm glued to this one for the next one, especially when it comes to knockout football. It's going to get spicy. It's going to get interesting. So I'm really looking forward to following the rest of the tournament.
Now that we've kind of gotten your perspective, and I would agree, like it's so tough to compete with the Euros because you have bigger nations that are at least ranked higher in FIFA and have some of the bigger star power and the names out there. So it was really tough for Copa to go up against something like that. And Euros also just does a better job of marketing, at least to us Americans from our perspective. Like I've seen a lot more advertisements and cooler content created for the Euros compared to what Copa is pushing out. And I'm sure like different budgets, different people in charge of things. So I think that is something that could be improved because Copa is cool. It's so many people are comparing like them since they're happening at the same time. You see like the old fancy type of people in Euro, like well put together. And then in Copa, you have like the rough uncle who's just like slinging stuff around. Like it is like a different vibe, which is cool because like you get two different styles of soccer and two different experiences, which is fun. And that could be like an advertisement thing that you do. I'm a marketing person, so like I could talk about that for a while. But
there we go.
Yeah, different worlds. So let's now talk about the thing that I want to talk about so I can yell for a little bit about the U.S. men's national team not making it out of our group. Before I do start yelling, I'd like to get your perspective. So I know you have like me as like a U.S. supporter, and I am a huge fan of our national teams. Like I love supporting U.S. men's national team, the U.S. women's national team. So when it comes to like you observing things from afar, like how does it look to you? Like what is the spin in the news, especially when something like this happens when the USA underperforms?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because when I've kind of seen it, it is definitely front and center for a start. The USA, I've seen loads of like Pulisic sorts of, not necessarily memes. I've seen a few bits and pieces about him. I think I saw a video of him, I think when they lost to the Uruguayan team, where he's going to the referees and going, they're celebrating. Just go and celebrate with them. Like, they're over there. You can celebrate with them. And there's that feeling, that fuel, that passion as well for the USA team. And we know in the World Cup, for example, when England played the USA, there's that passion, there's that creativity, and we're really excited to play. People as in our sort of friends across the pond. So it's always really interesting to see that USA, UK, England kind of sort of partnership and that kind of era as well. It's really interesting kind of watch. But overall, I think it's the tournament here anyway. It tends to be dominated by two real teams more and more creeping into that third team. Number one is obviously Messi in Argentina. Just everything's about how Messi has performed. If there's a goal by Messi, you're going to see it here in the UK, in the UK news, whatever the situation is. Of course, Brazil. If Brazil underperform in any way, it's plastered everywhere. Even if it's like a 1-1, it's going to be everywhere just because they should be winning absolutely everything. So there's that side of stuff. I know Vinicius is going to be suspended for the quarterfinals. So things like that are going to be front and center, a lot of the news that we have here. And I think the last thing as well is Darwin Nunez as well for Uruguay. So there's a couple of stories coming out about how his performance has been fairly good, getting a goal as well. And the kind of Bielsa is kind of turning them into a bit more of an attacking force, and Nunez is scoring. So those are the main kind of threads that we really get here. On top of that, having that kind of how are USA doing? There isn't, personally for me, it feels like there's almost like an underdog situation about the USA up against the likes of Brazil and of Argentina, who in the UK and England news, they're already destined for the final. So everything else is kind of like, well, we'll just see how it is. I mean, I genuinely, if the group stage didn't know, things like Panama were in, Bolivia, these things in the UK in English news that we wouldn't probably hear about. So it's really kind of great to see. But it is, of course, the key players are kind of bringing the Copa America to the UK.
That's cool. That's an interesting perspective. Like we get some of that, but it's much less focused on like the Brazil and Argentina, and it's more like holistic. So they'll give more news on some of the other teams, but then with that being said, it is always focused on the USA and how the USA are doing. And are they going to make it out of their group? Do they have the right manager in the right position? What are the players looking like? If there's an injury in a warm-up, like you know about it. So like they're, granted, I follow these circles too, but like that is like the main coverage. Like it is all US men's national team, which I prefer, but
I just want to add as well. Here, when it comes to the World Cups, for example, when we're looking at that side of the team, those sorts of like Copa America teams, Mexico's always in there. There's always this thing about Mexican football having the best fans or the energy, and some of their squad is always great. The keeper, for example. I mean, is that the same? Like, what they didn't make out their group, correct?
They did not make it out. So actually,
wow.
That is normally the case. Usually Mexico is our biggest rivals from a U.S. perspective. However, in the past couple of years, they have been having a rough time with their federation, with things being mismanaged, and that's now reflecting on the level that the Mexican players are able to play as well, and maybe not having the right players developed or in the right places. So they have not really been big competitors for the US anymore. So since that is the case, like that intensity, especially in the news cycles, has been dropped. So like Mexico aren't really talked about as much as it used to be. Like it used to be the big rivalry. You hear about all the stuff, like Memo Ochoa was the goalkeeper who's now retired, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's the
but
one, yeah.
So like those things have shifted, and it's been interesting to watch kind of the fade of Mexico kind of dropping out of the big vision when it comes to the U.S. men's national team and like being our main rival. So yeah, it's a little bit different. Now though, the part of when it comes to the U.S. men's national team and what is happening with them, I'm just going to do a quick beat on this because we all knew this was happening. It's quite clear in the buildup to this. There was never any signs that things were going to be different. So let's back up and say World Cup action. We got out of our group, which was a difficult group. What we drew England. So like that's like a pretty good barometer of what we're doing. We're able to compete with some of the bigger teams across the world. Then we end up getting knocked out the round of 16 against the Netherlands, I believe, which that makes sense. Like that's a normal spot for us to exit where we are currently with US soccer. However, as we now build out 2 years later up to Copa America, which we knew was going to be on home soil and a great dress rehearsal for the World Cup, we have a position where Greg Berhalter is out of contract. So U.S. Soccer needs to make a decision and say we need to hire either a new manager or renew Berhalter's contract. Weird situation. I don't know if it's mismanagement or like you like have a girlfriend and then you see a prettier girl. So you're trying to like debate on, oh, should I go after this prettier girl, even though it's going to take more effort, or should I stay with the girlfriend that I have now, who's just fine? So they had his contract ended, but then they still kind of kept him around while they were interviewing other candidates like Jesse Marsch. And actually Bielsa, who you had mentioned, who is now the head coach of Uruguay, was available. And U.S. Soccer had some conversations, but they said you have to be a certain level of fluent in English to be able to be the manager. Bielsa was not enough. So that was, I think, the reason why he just didn't continue on in the process. But obviously interviewing all these other people, having these other conversations with a new potential manager, which I would have loved to see Jesse Marsch take the helm because we needed something different. We knew that there needed to be change. Then, after all these interviews, nothing happens. We're waiting like months for something to happen as U.S. fans. And then eventually we just hear Berhalter has his contract reestablished. And he's going to be, I don't even know how long it is, up until the next World Cup. Like that is the plan, to have that current manager, which just unfortunately happens to be Berhalter, as our current manager for the upcoming World Cup. Problem for multiple issues here. That's just a bad look in terms of mismanagement from US soccer, in terms of like having this coach kind of in the wing, but then interviewing other people, but then just going back to that coach that you already did interviews to try to replace. But then what? You didn't find someone good enough that you wanted to replace him with, but then he can't even get us out of a Copa group. So then what does that say about the other managers that you did interview? And like, it just makes you look bad as US soccer when you're trying to actually act as a world soccer power, when clearly you're not making the foundational moves you need to get to that conversation. So that was a whole mismanagement thing, which we talked about previously, how I was not a fan of Berhalter being rehired. You gave him a shot, nothing different changed, so why would you bring him back again? Now we get to this point where Berhalter is around. Apparently, the players like him, which was one of the reasons why US Soccer brought him back in. But then we know all of the issues we had with Reyna, with Claudio Reyna, Gio Reyna's dad, who had like the weird situation with Berhalter, like releasing information about him in his past, like all of that drama. Then after all of that has settled, apparently the players still like Berhalter. So they ended up keeping him as the head coach, continuing on into Copa. But nothing throughout that whole process, nothing has changed. Everything has been the same. It's all been just mediocre results, like nothing that has really taken US soccer to the next level or taking the next step forward. But one of Berhalter's quotes was that he wants to change the way world thinks about US soccer. And unfortunately, he's done that, but for the negative, because not making it out of the group with Panama and Bolivia, that is just a disgrace. So that is a huge failure, which goes to show you that even though the players like the manager, the things that he is doing is not good enough to get what these players have in terms of potential out of them to be able to play as this golden generation, because they are good players. This is like one of the first times where all of our starting 11 or something is actually playing abroad over in Europe and other countries, not just in the MLS. So that means we are at a part or a point for US soccer where we have the potential to make big moves if you have the right structure in place. Kind of the same thing I talk about Manchester United. The talent is there. We know, like, we have a good manager. We have a lot of good players. If it's just managed appropriately, set up in the right structure, you can be successful. That is what is not happening with the US, and Berhalter has not been able to set up these players for success in the right ways. Some of the blame, of course, goes on the players not being able to compete effectively, do what they need to do, handle their responsibilities. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it is the manager who sends out those players in that certain system with whatever mindset is needed. And I would rather get rid of Berhalter, which I didn't want him back anyway in the first place, so that you can have a manager who can change things up, readjust some stuff, set up a better system for these players that have the potential and the talent to get out of the Copa America group into the knockout stages. So ultimately, all of this to say, US soccer has no idea what they're doing. It's kind of like the dysfunction that you experience, or we did experience previously, in the Manchester United front and back offices. Like, they're just trying to make decisions up as they go. It doesn't seem like they have a real strategy in place. So that's where it starts. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to change either, because it doesn't make it better for grassroots situations either, the way that they run US soccer without really any assistance to grassroots stuff, because like that's the world I live in with Delaware Rising. So that's not being helped out by US soccer either. So there's a lot of stuff happening that's not really in the right place. And then it just shows with one big piece, with Berhalter being in charge and the US not making it out of Copa. So disappointing. And the bad part is, out of all this, my last piece on this is, I don't know if this catastrophic failure will even lead to change. There are still so many people calling, of course, for Berhalter's head, as I am one of them, saying, yep, it makes sense. He needs to be out. We need to do something else, because 2026 is so important for the growth of US soccer and the development with having part of the World Cup hosted in the US. I am not sure that this is a big enough problem for US soccer, because I don't think they realize how intense it is, that they're going to make the change to bring in a new manager and to adjust things. I am sad, because I don't think that's going to happen, which is absolutely ridiculous. I don't care if the players like the manager or not. You need to have someone that gets the best results out of them.
So with that being said, so you're thinking, so ahead of the 2026 World Cup, which is obviously in the US, which is going to be a crazy experience. Football in the US and the World Cup is going to be an incredible experience. What one thing are you changing, aside from the manager? Because I think, let's be real, that's obviously a key thing. But aside from the manager, what are you changing?
So I would have manager out, And then I think that would hopefully, if you hire the right person, which I don't have any faith that they'll hire the right person, that would create a better structure for the top portion of US soccer, like the most competitive element where everyone watches the US men's national team. So like having your national team, so men's and women's like competing high levels, it's functioning well. I think having a better manager in place would allow that to happen. On the flip side, I think to get ready for the World Cup in the United States, they need to better develop what happens on the grassroots side, because that's where fans interact the most and it's closest to them, because it's so expensive to buy national team tickets. Like I've had just enough luck to be able to have some US men's national games happening in Ohio where it's just not as expensive as like your New Yorks or your LAs. So I've seen a couple matches, which is great, but it's still expensive from that point. Like you're paying a couple $100 just for a ticket just to go watch it, maybe not the best seats. So when you do then go on the other side of the pyramid, you have all of these super cool clubs doing amazing things with almost no budget and no assistance from US soccer. That is, again, where players get more opportunities, where fans interact more with the sport. So if you provide more assistance and guidance from that end of things, that gets more people interested in soccer that would not be able to have that opportunity if you're just focusing more so on like the men's and women's national teams. That definitely is a big piece of it. And that gets a lot of people excited, but you can marry those two things together by really making it a full like symbiotic experience where the bottom portion of soccer in the US helps feed the top excitement of the US, not only from like a developmental standpoint, which is what should be happening and is not, but then also from a fan standpoint. There's just so many missed opportunities, which is such a bummer, because having the World Cup in the US is such a great opportunity to try to continue to develop soccer in the US and really making it one of like the top 5 sports here, which is a struggle because we have a lot of sports that have the major leagues here. So having the World Cup in the US and then creating that system of making sure your men's team is set up with the right manager and then supporting more of the grassroots soccer stuff, I think would be the perfect combo. If there's 2 changes that could be made, those 2 things would be what I would want to see.
And we've talked about it already. Grassroots is a massive part of football, and it's something that needs to be done internationally. Just to have the right people, the right sort of the upbringing for young footballers, and also ensuring that they've got the infrastructure around is so incredibly important to help these teams fill the right players, and really try and build the best teams. Really, and it all begins from the grassroots football from the beginning. So, yeah. Wow. Yeah. Great stuff. Really interesting to kind of hear that side of stuff. Let's dive in to Euros. Let's move across from the Copa America to the Euros. The Euro 2024, of course, is taking place in Germany. Football, arguably, has always been German football, the brand of football they play has always been great. Maybe the past couple of seasons, past couple of years, it's not been amazing, especially the last previous tournament. Question marks about the team, but they're back on and they're performing well. So let's break down. There's actually 6 groups in the Euros. In Group A, you obviously got Germany, Switzerland, Hungary, and Scotland in that as well. Spain is in Group B. Spain, Italy, Croatia, and Albania. And then you have in Group C, England, Denmark, Slovenia, and Serbia. Group D is Austria, France, Netherlands, and Poland. And then Group E is Romania, Belgium, Slovakia, and Ukraine. And then Group F is Portugal, Turkey, Georgia, and Czech Republic, Czechia, as it's gone here. So a fairly mixed. There's I would say no easy groups, no hard groups. But as the tournament's gone on, what many people have called this tournament is unfortunately, it's been quite, I suppose, depends what you'd put label as boring, but it's been a boring tournament in terms of the type of brand of football that's been on show, and also the types of teams that perhaps have been performing and not performing. So let's break down just really quickly each group that's kind of gone through. So obviously you've got Germany, Switzerland, Hungary, and Scotland here. So that was an interesting game. First game in Scotland versus Germany, and it's a 5-1 to Germany. And you're thinking, wow, okay, if this is starting off, there's going to be goals galore. We're in for an absolute tournament. So everyone's lining up. There's a sending off, and it's Scotland get fairly beaten by Germany in that respect as well. So they're flying through. Germany go through in that group in particular. Closely followed by Switzerland, which I think most people would have bet on anyway. So you're looking at Germany, Switzerland. You'd put those two teams down as the two teams to go through. Group B, you had Spain, Italy, Croatia, and Albania. This was an interesting group. Many thought that this is Croatia. If you're looking at Modric, potentially Modric's last sort of game in terms of as a player for his international team. You've got Italy, the holders. The less we talk about the last Euros, the better. But of course, Italy bringing together a squad which, it's maybe not as strong as perhaps previous seasons, but being the European holders, the Euros holders, they think they would perform quite well. But unfortunately for them, it was actually fortunately for them, because Italy and Spain did go through. Sadly, Croatia and Albania didn't make it. So what they do as well here in these groups, unlike the Copa America, we obviously have so many teams in this particular area. They do the best third placed, which I'll get into later on in a second. So there was still a chance for Croatia, but unfortunately they didn't make the cut in terms of number of points. You've got England in the next group, England, Denmark, Slovenia, and Serbia, and there was England, Denmark going through in that one, which people expected it, which is fair enough. And the Slovenia got through in the third place as well, which is great to see. We'll break down England. You sort of glossed over England there, but I'm going to get into that one later on because I feel like I need some time just to break that one down. Austria, France, Netherlands was a very interesting one. Many people saw that as like a walkthrough for France would be top of that group. Netherlands would be probably closely after. Austria probably maybe creep into their potential in third place, and Poland be out. Unfortunately, Poland, I know obviously, Andrew, that is not great to hear, but Poland did not make through. We have Austria actually winning that group, which for me have been, a fairly good performance. Ralf Rangnick, if you remember Ralf Rangnick, Manchester United previous manager, who came out and said all manner of things which are now completely true, which was interesting. He's gone playing a good brand of football. So Austria went through there, France went through, and also Netherlands went through actually on one of the best third place. So then you got Group E, Romania, Belgium, Slovakia, and Ukraine. Romania ended up winning that group, which many people did not see coming. Belgium had a poor tournament. In terms of what many people ask, or many people sort of refer to as the golden generation of Belgian football. It wasn't meant to be, but they did get through. And then you've got Slovakia did also get through. And then in Group F, you've got Portugal, Turkey, Georgia, and Czechia. Czechia, unfortunately, went out. Portugal, great tournament. And as a Man United fan, it's really great to kind of see players like Bruno Fernandes, for example, Diego Dalot, getting these games, getting these high quality putting these high quality performances as well, which is great to see. You want them having international football in their particular country, so that'll be even better for club football as well. And Portugal and Turkey went through in that one. So fairly solid performances across the group. We're now currently into the quarterfinals. So in terms of the round of 16, it was a couple of not necessarily shocks that kind of came through. Italy first. Unfortunately for them, they lost 2-0. So it is Switzerland and then England versus Slovakia. I think it's a good time really for me to break down England, but I'll come on to that. I want to get your view on the current state of the Euros first. We've got England came through 2-1 against Slovakia. Yesterday we had Romania lose to the Netherlands, so it's Netherlands, and of course Turkey beat Austria, which many people didn't really see in terms of the way Austria were playing. So that is a Netherlands-Turkey quarterfinal. And then we have the most mouth-watering of ties. I've already blocked out our Friday evening because here in Dubai, the two matches are at 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. But they are arguably the creme de la creme of football, European football. We have Spain versus Germany, and then we have Portugal versus France. Let me just drop it back to you for 1 sec. What is your current? We're just at the stage now, getting towards the quarters. What's your thoughts have been in the tournament so far? How has it translated in the US from the Euros?
I think the translation to the US is it's fairly similar to World Cup vibes, not as intense, but like as like even a general soccer fan and of course hardcore soccer fans all end up following the Euros, and it's fairly easy to catch like on TVs. So Fox, I think, is the broadcast that ends up getting all of the games and then can share them. So that's a pretty popular way to see them, and they share them like on YouTube TV. That's how I've watched most of them. But there was an issue of like some of the games are being shown, but some are not. So that was a big piece of news where while they were selecting only certain games to show and not all of them, but it's fairly popular. And I think overall, from like an experience perspective, it didn't bring like the most excitement in terms of crazy goals being scored and stuff like that. However, there were some teams that have played well and performed well. So like Austria was one of those, Romania, just that group in general that Romania was in, where they all ended up on 4 points. That is the first time in Euros history where there has been a group where all of the teams have ended on 4. And it was almost like a decision day type of deal when they were playing games. You could see like who's going up and who was going down. So that was pretty cool. So that was exciting. The other piece is Euros. Shaqiri is always fun to follow because he scores in all the Euros. So that's pretty exciting. And he's like the first MLS player who's like an active MLS player to play in the Euros. So that was a talking piece over here in the US. Then, of course, Germany performing pretty well. The Spain team looks super dangerous. That's been like a big piece that a lot of broadcasters have talked about here, how they're looking good, even though they're playing like a different style than previous Spain teams before. So that's been exciting to see because they're more hard flying with their wings. Like Nico Williams is super exciting to watch. So a lot of good stuff, I think, overall. But I think, yeah, you're right. Just not the maybe sexiest of tournaments that we've had with the Euros. And then, of course, I think a big piece of that, too, for you is how England has not been playing as wonderful as some would have expected, myself included. And with that, my last little piece is I predicted Hungary to be my dark horse. They were more like a whimpering pony, if anything. So that did not work out too well for my prediction. I was thinking Soboslai was just going to make it his tournament. He did not, so that's fine. But now we can at least just talk about the sadness that you have for England, even though they're through. They're going to the knockouts. Unfortunately, not like the US.
Yeah, I mean, scraped through. I mean, I don't even know where to begin with this England squad. I think if you look at it, my initial thought is we've definitely got the players. If you look at it on paper, we were odds-on favourites as well to win. And technically still are odds-on favourites, which I don't think people making those haven't obviously watched an England game or watched any of the Euros, because that is crazy to even consider. I mean, my first thing I would say is I don't like to bash managers too much because I feel like they have a tough job as it is. But I feel like, and I think a lot of people listening would agree as us, I think Gareth Southgate really has not utilized the players he's got in his hand. He's not really, in my opinion, really dealt the correct cards in certain parts of the game. And also I feel his non-risky kind of brand of football is really showing in some of these performances. I think there was the Slovenia game, I think it was, which was the final game of the group, and it was one of the worst 0-0 draws I've generally watched in terms of England play. Just nothing. Like, it was like people, like you're in a park, you're just having a kickabout where you're just passing around at the back. There is no cohesion from front to back. I mean, we've got the players. There's just nothing happening. No one's doing any forward balls. It's just really lethargic, slow brand of football, not risky. We score a goal and then we just sit back. The best performance I saw was England was in that first 20 minutes of that first game against Serbia. That was it for me. And since then, it's really been the exact same. In every single game, I'm feeling more and more like, oh, maybe they'll click here. Maybe we'll start Kobe Mainoo, so that'll be it. No, it hasn't clicked. And it's just, there isn't enough for me at the moment. If I'm completely honest, I've already mentally in my mind think that's quarterfinal game in Switzerland, quarterfinal game, we're already out at that point. I'm not confident in any way. And this is the least confident I've ever felt. Just because Switzerland playing really well, to brand of football they've got together has been fantastic. But in my mind, I don't feel there is going to be anything different to what we've seen already in the past few games. It's a knockout game. even if you go 1-0 up, we're going to sit back. They're going to be going for us. And unlike Slovakia in the previous game, those goals will go in. So I don't see us winning the tournament in any capacity. I don't see us really getting out of the Switzerland game alive. And of course, how we even made it into this quarterfinal is crazy. And like that, we needed that 95th minute winner from one and only Jude Bellingham, which is crazy because he's had a very mixed tournament, I would argue as well. First game, crazy, missing for 2 games. And then I would argue for about 80 minutes, he was kind of just not really clicking the game. And then you like getting a 95th minute overhead kick. I mean, it was just the atmosphere is crazy, and it was a great goal. So, and then for us to score so quickly, but decisions, not correct decision being made. Gareth Southgate's brand of non-risky football, and things just not clicking for us, and the pace of the game for us. I'm seeing, as you mentioned, the Spain game. I'm seeing players like Williams, Yamal, for example. I'm seeing Jamal Musiala. I'm seeing these players, and all it really takes is one player to tear up a team, and they've definitely got it in them. So, yeah, that's my piece on the England team. What's your take on it? Because I know you've watched a couple of the games as well.
I feel like we're in the same space as a US fan and as an England fan. Like, I feel like our teams are the same right now. Like, we have the talent and good players to be a solid team that should be making runs in tournaments. But it just seems like for some reason, the management isn't doing what should be done, whether it's playing the right players at the right time, having the right mindsets instilled in the players, maybe not using the right strategies. And it's just disappointing to be a fan of that type of soccer. And I feel like it's the same with Manchester United as well. Like, it's just more disappointing right now to be a fan than it is. So, man, just a lot of disappointment for us all around.
And I think, as you brought Manchester United, I think it's almost prepared me emotionally for this England team, because I have genuinely zero expectations, and I go in there thinking, we'll see what happens. And I've not felt that in a while. I think they always say, as an England fan, it's the hope that kills you. And I generally do not have any hope. Like, my heart is like, do you know what? We've had a good run. Actually, no, that's a lie. We've had a very mediocre run, and we've very luckily somehow, it's like we've just found ourselves in the quarterfinals. We're going, okay, right. Okay, let's calm down. And what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to play football? Like, it's just... yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, we'll see on Saturday, right? That's all we can do. We can really see. I'm technically more excited for that Friday evening of football when you've got the Portugals, the France, Spain, Germany. I mean, that there is technically 2 finals being played in a quarterfinal stage. So it's going to be just crazy football. It's got to be knockout football. There's going to be drama. It's going to be a great game. With that being said, who do you think takes it? So now you kind of know the current state of play in terms of quarterfinals. Who do you think? Who's in the final for you?
Well, it was. So when we made our predictions, or last episode or 2 episodes ago, I did have, like I said, Hungary as my dark horse. It did not work out. However, I had England making it to this round, but then getting knocked out at this point. So if Switzerland does the job, then I'm right on par of where I should be. However, I think that draw is fairly fortunate for England. Like, you could have gone up against some of the heavy hitters like Spain, Italy, Portugal. So I think this is a potentially winnable game. Yeah, it just is a bummer for you guys because the state of play is just not where it should be in the England camp right now. So that is a bit sad, but I empathize with you because same exact vibes across the pond over here. My final is actually being played out right now in the quarterfinals. So I said that Portugal and France would be the 2 teams that would make it to the final. So with the interesting way that the groups played out, that is obviously not possible. So I'm super excited to watch that match, but I was underwhelmed by France this tournament. They just didn't seem to have the same panache as they do normally in other world tournaments. So that makes me start questioning them a little bit. I did not expect Spain to play the way that they did. So if I have to pick a favorite now, it's Spain for sure. Being able to adjust the style of play that they have done for so long that won them a World Cup previously. Like, it's just wild to see the transition and then also to win pretty dominantly with that new style of play too. And it's exciting to watch, like high flying, but able to play like solid defense at the same time. Like, it's pretty cool. So if I had to pick a favorite right now, I would say that Spain is the one that makes it through. And I don't know if there's really anyone that can stop them that is left. Like, I don't have any hope for England, Switzerland, Netherlands, or Turkey to be able to stop Spain. Germany will be a potential road bump. And if I'm going to make a prediction, I think that France didn't show me enough. So I'm going to say Portugal makes it through. I think Portugal could really be the only one that would match up fairly well against Spain because they have certain players in their squad as well that can pull apart the Spanish defense. And then they can also still counter at the same time with some of the players that they have too. So I really do think that Portugal will end up causing the most problems for Spain if they end up pulling it out the way that I see it happening. But for me, yeah, Spain is really the one that I think should win it all.
I'm the same. I mean, you mentioned it as well. How easy can England get it? Like, I'm just trying to comprehend how it's fallen essentially in our laps. And if we are playing any good brand of football, there's no way we wouldn't make it to that final. I'm just looking at this lineup. We've got England, Switzerland, Netherlands, and Turkey. You're thinking out of those teams, England should beat each one of those, so we should be in the final, right? So if you look at it, it is technically crafted for us to win, but there is no lead into that. And then obviously, go on.
I have a question for you. It's England related. So this happened during the, I think, Africa Cup of Nations. If that was the most recent African like big tournament of all of the different nations getting together. So I think that's what it was. So it was happening like half a year ago, and I forget which team it was, but they fired their head coach like after the first game into the tournament or something crazy like that, and then ended up like winning and getting, I think, into the knockouts after that and doing well after they brought in like a temporary coach. If you had the choice right now, would you get rid of Southgate during this tournament, knowing that like there is the potential to get through to the final and picking any manager that you would want to put into place? Do you think that if that happened, England would do well? And would you even want to replace Southgate right now if you could?
Is that your take it or leave it? So my initial first thought was, I think personally dropping Southgate causes too much upheaval. That's my first thought. And I think that's because when it comes to tournament football, it is a camp, right? It's a tournament and it's like you're building. It's, the manager's got weeks building this team with the players. And yes, maybe it's not clicking, but I feel like it does more damage, I would argue, for England in terms of the way we're in at the moment. Yes, we're not playing the greatest football, but I feel like we'd play worse football if we, just mainly because of the timing of it, I just don't think it would click for us. Having said that, if Pep Guardiola, for example, was like, hey, look, England, let me save your tournament. And he was available and was like, yeah, do you know what? I'm not doing anything in the next couple of weeks. Let me win you a Euros. I'm taking it at that point, right? I think because there's no two ways about it. But realistically, I don't see it happening. I wouldn't want that. And yeah, I can't imagine that scenario. Put it this way. I can't imagine, or basically as well, part of me and selfishly is I know confidently this is Southgate's last tournament. So I just kind of want him to see it out. And
you think it is for sure? What happens if he wins the whole thing? Does he stay?
Andrew, mate, you've been watching this brand of football. I'm telling you right, we're not winning. And something would have to happen dramatically in that England-Switzerland game for us to even get anywhere near the level of quality to be winning tournaments. But go on.
Let's say the hand of God comes down and blesses England for some reason. And like, I'm an England supporter. So my family lineage on my mom's side, from the whole city area, shout out to Swanland, been there, love it. So I always root for England. Got that home vibe. Also, you mentioned Poland too. My dad's side, my last name Schwalek, comes from Poland. Been to Krakow, where my family's from there too. So love the lineage vibes. Thankfully, England is usually pretty good, so that makes it like nice to root for a good team for once. But if the hand of God does come down and it happens for England, they win the final. It's crazy. It's insane. Everyone's happy. Does Southgate stay? What happens?
Ooh. It's difficult because I can't even imagine that happening. It's such a difficult question because if you're saying, so what you're saying essentially is something clicks for England in that Switzerland game, right? So in that Switzerland game, we just end up performing like prime France 99, whatever it is, right? So we end up scoring goals, whatever it is. Then arguably there's no point leaving Southgate, right? At that point, he's then crafted a quarterfinals, a semi-final, and a final. He's got them playing in three key games, beating some big teams, i.e., Spain, etc., and also won a final. So at that point, you think, well, we've turned the corner here. Southgate, fair play to you. Something's clicked for you. Let's just continue this to get the show running for the World Cup. But if that unlikely to happen, then yeah, he's gone.
I feel like England fans would not want Southgate to stay still if that happens. And I don't think it will end up happening in a way where it just magically clicks and everything plays well. I think it'll be more so like Kane ends up just turning on and score some goals in the right times. So then you guys end up getting through. My other question now is it almost like at a point where you kind of want England maybe to just get knocked out here so then Southgate's just done and you don't have to worry about it anymore? Because that's what it's like in the U.S. Like, I'm super bummed and annoyed that the U.S. got knocked out and not even out of the group. Like, that's insane. However, the one little nice silver lining is that should mean that Berhalter is gone. And the extra piece of we have this chance to compete in a World Cup on home soil. So we need all of our ducks in a row. And Berhalter is just not the duck that's doing it. So if we can get him out in time to give another manager time to make it better for the World Cup. So I feel like it's almost maybe a same type of vibe.
Oh, 100%. I think part of me is also saying, look, let's just see out the Switzerland game. Let's lose comprehensively, or at least show why Southgate isn't here. And let's just get on and done with, because that's my opinion. I feel we've got too much potential to stay with Southgate, especially with playing like this. Exactly the same with the US team. It feels like, let's just get it over. Let's just get across the line. Let's just, take that loss and keep things moving and get a new manager, because the potential is too high for us to do that. But at the same time, I'm going to say something about Southgate here. And I think maybe his brand of football isn't great, but what he's done for this England squad should not be underrated, right? So what he's done to where he's brought England to, there was Southgate, you're the one chance, right? What he's done for English football, no other manager has done. So let's clarify that. The performances that we've put in, the getting to the final. Can you imagine? England were in the finals. Yes, we didn't win, but we're in the final, semi-final against France. We are improving as an England team. And what he's done, whether with the media, for example, what he's done with individual players and picking the right players, I feel like this has been a very bad year, I would argue, that even the Nations League and some of the games we played just wasn't great. Even the friendlies just didn't click for us. But prior to that, I don't think Southgate's done anything wrong. Yes, it has been electric football, but we've won matches and we've got to very high points in tournaments. Giving the manager that, it's still a difficult thing to do. So I don't want to do. For me now, it's time. It's more to a line of his time has come, because they're not performing for the past year, not just this tournament. But we'll see on Saturday. And I can guarantee when we have this next conversation, it'll be a very interesting point. And I would challenge you to ask me the question again after Saturday's game.
I will make sure to ask you that question. At least you have positive things to say about Southgate. I don't have positive things about Berhalter. He actually coached the Columbus Crew for a little while, and I thought he did a decent amount as a manager there, but just not inspiring enough from the U.S. men's national team perspective. Also, I hate Jurgen Klinsmann, previous U.S. men's national team manager, and people know this about me. I don't hate many people. He's one of them because of the way that he handled the end of Landon Donovan's U.S. men's national team career. But with that, Jurgen Klinsmann got a group of MLS players out of the World Cup group against some of the heavy-hitting European teams and into the knockout rounds. And if we have a full slate of U.S. men's national team players who are playing in Europe now at higher levels of competition even in the Premier League, like doing good stuff in the Premier League, like Tim Ream and Jedi Robinson on Fulham and like doing a great job with their defense. And we can't get out of a group. Like that's just insane. So I don't really have nice things to say. So at least you can talk highly of some of the
It's
stuff he's
because
done.
I've grown up with like England getting to like that Portugal, those quarterfinals, and never really getting out. We've all been there. I've had the tears growing up, getting knocked out, penalty shootouts, and I've the fact that now England are favourites. I still coming to terms with the fact that we're actually so good that we put favourites to beat teams like France, Germany, Spain. Like we were the top before coming into this tournament. That is for me instilled the love for England, the confidence we've had for England that we've not had before. No one manager's bought that. If you think about the Fabio Capello days, Roy Hodgson, like your Steve McLaren, it's just there's just been so many poor in Sven-Goran Eriksson. There's been so many poor managers which have had a fairly good squad, a very good squad, like Lampard, Gerrard's in that squad, for example, Beckham, Michael Owen, Ashley Cole, some of the best players that were in there, and we've just not clicked. So the fact that we've actually got a very, very good team and we're actually now challenging other teams makes me proud to be an England fan. But it's just things aren't clicking in this tournament at the moment.
So what do you think the problem is, since this seems to be something long-term? You always have talented players, like some of the most talented players in the world, and it just doesn't ever seem to click. Do you think it's just the poor management? Is there like some issue with the structure of the FA?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, there was no issues until this tournament, until this past year, I would argue. Like, this conversation would not be happening if we were playing a good brand of football, because if you're measured on your the how far you go in a tournament, right? England should be rightfully in semi-finals and finals. That's the minimum we should be going for. And if you're looking at it in comparison to the Premier League, you should be aiming for top four. And you don't chop a manager that's been hitting in top four, right? That's just you're performing in that space. Like no one dropped Jurgen Klopp. I'm not comparing Jurgen Klopp to Southgate. I'm just saying. But the two, the goals are being hit. You want to be fan, you want to be saying, yes, we should have won those, but you could break that down another time. But so there's nothing going wrong in that space. It's just, I think the past year, I don't know whether Southgate's maybe got more pressure on him and feels like I need to play more safe, and I'm not picking players, or I'm not trying my best I'm just trying to see out games. Let me get that 1-0 or a 1-1. Let me just see it out. There's none of that. We're 1-0 up. Let's open the door and let's get out this team. Let's get that 2-second goal. There is none of that. It's just, hey, we've got the 1-0. Let's just sit back a bit. Let's just play it around the back. Let's just shore it up, and we'll get through. And I think that's is stopping us from taking us to the next level, is I would argue.
With other managers, though, you've even talked when you were growing up, some of those other English managers maybe have had the same type of problems, because you still have the Michael Owens, Wayne Rooney's, some top tier talent always in the England squad. Beckham, yeah, why hasn't it ever clicked?
Probably the question is, will it ever click? Is the question, I suppose, right? If you argue the best opportunity we had was in that Euros, and I would argue that in that extra time, there was a couple of things that perhaps, Kane misses a penalty, and there's certain things that perhaps on any other day we win, I would argue, because we didn't do anything wrong in that game. It was just certain things that didn't count against us. And I think that's probably where it kind of boils down to. It's perhaps moments more than anything. And I think perhaps what Southgate and the other managers haven't done is instilled an area of belief around this squad. In the media, if you look at some of the interviews and how he speaks about it, for example, it feels almost refreshing to have him. He's very well PR trained, that's not going to deny it, but he feels very assured about how he wants to protect players and that side of stuff. He's not that Mourinho style manager where he's bad mouthing, for example, other players or performances. He's just very assured. He's almost like a father at a family, with a family, for example, going, do you know what, we're going to get there. And it's that, and I feel like that's what England needed. It needed a home, I would argue, and it needed an infrastructure, which perhaps other managers haven't. They've come and gone in, right? I think he's built that each tournament. Even the players say it. Some of the interviews, the players we feel like a family, the camp is good, the atmosphere is good around the club. It's just, there just seems to be different than other managers. He's developed something. I don't know what it is, but the squad or the tournament itself.
Maybe that's the problem. It's the same with the US. They love him. That's great. We want to have Berhalter around. And then we just suck. Maybe you just got to have like a little less family, maybe like an extended family, like a weird uncle. Who knows? I have one last England question for you. This is actually my take it or leave it as well. So England would be a better team if they traded Mbappe for Saka. Take it or leave it.
I think there's an obvious answer to this, but it's very difficult because I would argue that that question could be applied to any team. You could argue that with any club. You could pull out any player and bring in Mbappe and you'd be a better player, better team. So I think for sure, if you watch Mbappe, even though he's not the greatest tournament, yes, but and some defenders have talked about it as well, that extra inch of pace that he has to slow it down and then take it past you is something that perhaps Saka doesn't have. Yes, he's a very dynamic player, a very straightforward player, but their approach to get down the byline is very different. Mbappe is just different gravy. That's also comparing Saka and Mbappe. And personally, I mean, yes, I'm not an Arsenal fan, guaranteed, but I mean, even Arsenal fans would agree with me that there is no comparison between Saka and Mbappe. So, I mean, that's an obvious 100% yes. I mean, I'm definitely, is that a take it that Mbappe, Mbappe 100% makes England a better team. He makes any team in world football a better team.
Yeah, I think so too. I would probably take that as well. The one caveat is I think it depends who is in the squad with him. The one good piece for Mbappe, he can really do a lot of stuff on his own for the most part. He can create stuff, not the same level as like Messi can, but he can still change a game. However, if you have Kyle Walker in at right back, and then if you just straight swap for Mbappe, who I think is more normally on the left side, but you put him on where Saka's playing on the right sometimes, and Walker just doesn't have that same, if it's chemistry or passing ability to release Saka where he can be most dangerous. I don't know if it will really make that big of a difference having Mbappe in the England national team squad in place of Saka, unless you adjust your lineup a bit to cater more toward what Mbappe can do. But yeah, if you're comparing apples to apples, I would say, yeah, I would take Mbappe as well over Saka, unfortunately, because I love Saka. I think he's awesome.
Yeah, no, Tyson, totally with you. It's an interesting comparison because they are both incredible players in their own right. So I'm going to give you my take it or leave it before we get into Man United. We'll break into a bit of Man United just before we end the show. So we talked a bit about Bielsa and there were some potential conversations. And my take it or leave it is the US team, if they had Bielsa at this point, they would be probably looking at semi-finals, quarterfinals, and probably potentially doing better than they've done at the moment. Would you take that or leave it?
Yeah, I'm going to take it. I don't even care what name you would have said instead of Bielsa. I would have taken it. Bielsa,
but I'm interested. Yeah, specifically about Bielsa. Though,
he has a unique style of play, and he just commands more respect in terms of his managerial past, but also his managerial style, which I think is what is needed for more of an independent cultural identity that U.S. soccer has, because we have a lot more players and just like our cultural identity is more like independent, so that individuals try to do more individual style things on the pitch. It's more difficult to work together as a team. And not saying the U.S. doesn't do that. Like they still work together. They have a good team environment. It looks like camp is at least happy from a culture perspective. So that's good. However, Bielsa just brings different sauce to the kitchen, and having him in the mix and driving what the U.S. is trying to build, I think would have been awesome and so much more exciting to watch, and would hopefully inspire more from the players, because ultimately I think that's the key. Having a manager that, one, has the right system, which I think Bielsa would have a good system, and look at what Uruguay are doing. The system is good, but then also that extra piece that I think really is needed in the next manager for the U.S. men's national team is having the inspiration to make sure the players are up for the games and have the right kind of mindset going into the matches, not where you're like punching some dude in the face in the 17th minute to get a red card and put yourself down against Panama. Like, ultimately, that is on the player, of course. But then if you're in a state where that's even remotely acceptable or something you even think about in a match where it wasn't like a big hard tackle or anything, like you just get bumped, then I need a manager that can control a player like that, or make the decision to know that that player is not in the right headspace, so he doesn't deserve to be on the pitch. So ultimately, it's Berhalter's fault. I want him out. I would have loved to have Bielsa. I wish that was the case.
Let me give you a follow-up question before we get into the Man United side. Any manager in the planet, who are you going for the US team? One manager.
I mean, I would, of course, take Guardiola because he's just a legend, but I'm going to actually narrow your question down because Guardiola would be my answer. But if I can narrow it down to managers that are available, because that's been a hot topic now in U.S.
Fair.
men's national team settings, Klopp is available. I would love to have Jurgen Klopp as the U.S. men's national team manager. I don't think that would happen in any universe, but I think he would be the perfect fit. I think he has a property in the U.S. or something like that, or he travels here a lot. Like, I think it would be awesome, and I think he has the right systems, and he commands the right type of respect from players to be making us an instant impact and not necessarily instant superpower, but like we will now be competing against Argentina's, Brazil's, and like being in the conversation as opposed to like barely making it out of, or not making it out and not even really barely. Like we're just not even in the conversation to make it out of the group with Bolivia. Like, come on. Like I love Bolivia. I've been there, but like that's just different worlds in terms of footballing nations. So Klopp would instantly make us more competitive just the way that he is. So that's who I would love to have for sure.
Great choice. I didn't even think about that. That is actually a really great choice, especially ahead of the 2026. Maybe it's an opportunity. I mean, that would be.
Please.
I mean, if you're talking about marketing, imagine that, because then you'd want to see the US team, like the impact that
I would pay whatever you need. I would write a check right now to go watch Klopp manage the U.S. men's national team. I would cry. Like I don't even care what amount of money it would be. Can you use like your English connections over there to like make something happen? That would be great, please. Thank you.
Amazing. Let's get into some more exciting news about Manchester United, which we've not said that in a while. We've not said the word exciting and Manchester United together in a sentence for a while. But some exciting news, not necessarily on the pitch, but more off the pitch. So Man United have had a bit of a restructure in the back room, in the back office, and it's been an interesting one. And filled people with a lot of excitement. Aaron, do you want to do a little bit of a breakdown for us so we can sort of chip in?
I would love to do this. Yes, this is what I have been bugging Manchester United to do for like 2 years now, to just get some people in place in the front/back office so that we can actually be competitive again as a club. Because I really think having structure, that foundation, is what makes clubs and organizations better, function better. So we actually have this released. I'm not quite sure where it came from, but it's almost like an organizational chart of who manages what portion. And I still am a little bit confused as to like how much Ineos has in terms of control, because I know that's like Ratcliffe's company and that's like how they ended up making the purchase. So the breakdown is, you could probably find this on social media, of Sir Jim Ratcliffe kind of at the top and in charge of everything with Ineos, but then also Manchester United. But it's broken down into two different sections. You have your top section with Ineos and the Ineos executives, but I think it's in French. So their like actual positions are in French, the descriptors underneath. So then you have to the right and left. So I'm guessing like the right-hand man and left-hand man for Ratcliffe is the director de operations. So that is going to be director of operations. Does that mean for Ineos, but also for Manchester United? I'm going to probably guess he'll dabble with both things. Then on the other side, it looks like it's the director of sport, which is under the Ineos title. So I'm guessing since they have the majority ownership through Ineos, he kind of handles that direction as well. And then, of course, Ratcliffe at the top. But then it breaks down into the Manchester United specific section. Then you'll have the club CEO or director, which is exciting because like a hands-on person that's involved with the day-to-day club stuff, leading them in the right direction. I don't know too much about Omar Beretta, but I'm excited to at least have that position available for someone to be a part of it. And I forgot the names of Ratcliffe's people, but it's Jean-Claude Blanc and David Brailsford. Those are the right and left-hand men. Then you have the CEO, Omar Beretta. Then we actually have a director of tactics, or like technical director, Jason Wilcox. That's exciting having him in. Then they have like a director of sport also underneath. That's why I'm a little confused as to like who is doing what with Ineos versus Manchester United. But then you have Dan Ashworth, which we've talked about on the podcast before. Tons of awesome footballing experience. So I'm excited to have him in and like leading the sporting side, which I think makes sense. And that's what I have wanted to see for so long. And he's been in here for a little bit of time, but now having a full structure and team to support him, I think will be very exciting. And then we have Christopher Vivell. I don't really know what he does, to be honest with you. Do you know what
Yeah.
this man
So
does?
I've got here, I think it's director of recruitment, de recruitmento. So it might be Spanish, I think.
Nice.
Director de recruitment. So new director of recruitment there.
I'm excited to have that because I forget Ed Woodward. I was not the biggest fan of him. He had many hats that he wore at Manchester United, but I was not a fan of his recruiting style and who he brought in. So having a individual that will assist the manager with that, I think, is huge because it was on just Ten Hag previously to essentially figure out who he wanted in his squad without really much oversight. So I think having someone assist with that will be beneficial and be maybe less stressful for Ten Hag since Ten Hag will be sticking around. Then, of course, underneath of that, we have Ten Hag, and then we have Van Nistelrooy and Renee Hawk as his assistants. What's your thought on the structure? Like, I wanted this, so
Yeah, I think we're finally getting there. And as I said at the top of the show, I think this is an exciting move just for Manchester United to almost settle the club down a bit. We won the FA Cup, but prior to that, even in the performances as Manchester United fan, we've been here many times before on the podcast. This haven't clicked, and we said a lot of it was attributed to the backroom staff, and perhaps there was the uncertainty above just wasn't clicking with the team as well. So with this, I feel it almost like adds stability to the team, but also to the club as well. And some of these hires I think are fantastic. So Omar Barada is an interesting one. So he used to be at Man City and managed the City Football Group, which did a lot of work and something that I've always craved and really wanted for Manchester United. And I think that Man City really clicked. They've built a international business here. They've moved away from just football as well as getting that, and that main reason they get the money in as well as having that the shake and the rest of the money, etc. Has been because they've made some very shrewd business decisions. And what Omar Barad has done in the past as well, he's had partnerships with other teams. For example, I remember Man City, the Red Bull, New York City FC as well, like. The link up, making that like there was the city and that was like a farm essentially to get players into it. And Lampard went over there for a bit and there was that side of stuff. So I think what he's done in terms of building like a business infrastructure around in terms of the City group and linking businesses and creating some big money off the back of that for the club, I think were really important for Manchester United. I feel like it's really lacking on that side. So that's, I think, is massively important. Dan Ashworth, we know at Brighton, for example, he's discovered some really big gems at Brighton, which I think Matoma might have been one of them. So he knows his stuff, and what he will bring, I think, will be that side of just knowing the gems, but also knowing the type of players that he wants. Right. And he's been there at Newcastle, for example. He's in a big organization, a big club. So it'll be interesting to see how that fits into the club in general. But that, for me, those two really be exciting moves. And it's really good to see this kind of laid out now. It feels like it's more of like a calming influence. We know what we've got. Yes, we still have, and from this chart here that I've created, the Glazer side, which I'm sure is huge, is off here, and will definitely have some sort of impact. So we're not completely out of the woods yet, but it really allows for me that kind of like clarification to kind of see where we're at. And another thing was, final thing as well for myself, Van Nistelrooy is a really interesting one because we know, if you're a Manchester United fan, Rui Van Nistelrooy very, very well. Everyone knows him. When I think of Van Nistelrooy, I think of him in the Vodafone top. Just great performances, great strike for Manchester United. So having him in the back, imagine that would really elevate. He's been there, right? He's been in those places. He knows the club inside out, and he's been a manager. He's managing, I think, in Spain, or was it Spain or in the Netherlands somewhere? Not sure exactly which club, but he was in management as well. So he'll only get better and support Ten Hag as well. Obviously, they're both speaking Dutch. It'll be like an interesting collaboration, him knowing Manchester United. And we know the Dutch connection between Manchester United and Denmark as well. So between Manchester United and Netherlands in particular. So, I reckon exciting. Are you as excited as me?
Honestly, I'm more excited just about the structure in general because, like I had said, this is the thing I've been wanting for so freaking long. I don't know why it's taken this long to get this structure in place. If anything, I get hiring the right people to fill those pieces is tough, but even just release a chart saying, hey, Manchester United, we know we're struggling. Look, this is what we're trying to do. This is going to be our organizational breakdown. So here is this chart that we're going to be filling with positions over the next half year, months, whatever it needs to be to fill those positions. That would have calmed me down as a Manchester United fan quite a bit, knowing that we're struggling during just the regular Premier League season. So seeing this chart actually does make me feel better because, again, this is what I wanted for so long. And seeing some of the names that I do know without doing any research makes me feel confident that we're at least heading in the right direction finally, after so much stress and me yelling at my stupid microphone for them just to create some dang structure. I finally feel better about that.
I'm hoping we'll be saying that and they'll come into the squad, into the club when the Premier League starts again. We need a good start to that, and I think this will be the beginning of that as well. As we close out the show, just want to go into our, of course, nutmegs of the week. Do you want to kick off, or shall I jump into this one?
Take it away.
So I'll start off. It's Euros based. It's around the BBC. So we know obviously that we had the Portugal. What game did they play? Let me just check 1 second. There was the previous game that they scored. It was they missed a penalty. 1 second. It was, of course, extra time. Slovenia. That's the team I'm looking for. That's it. So Portugal, Slovenia. It was 0-0. We're getting to that kind of squeaky bum time. It's near the end of the game, and of course, Cristiano Ronaldo gets a penalty. And it's Cristiano Ronaldo. It's a penalty. It's like what 80. I think it was 15 minutes to go in the game, so it might have been like a couple of minutes off, maybe 75 minutes, maybe something like that. Takes the penalty and then misses, and he's in tears, and it's not great. Portugal do end up winning that, and if you haven't watched the highlights of that penalty shootout, I don't know what was happening and how Diego Costa was incredible that game, because he saves a 1-on-1. And then he saves 3 penalties like crazy. Go watch those highlights. That's a very, very good game. The final end of that game, anyway, is pretty good. But he misses, and then back on the BBC highlights, they're doing some coverage of it. And you've got pundits talking about the miss that Ronaldo did. And what they have at the bottom during that highlight is they're written, and this is BBC, by the way, they're written Mistiano Penaldo as the caption for the penalty miss. I mean, yeah, it's funny, but for a player of that level, for BBC to be doing that, I just don't think it really sits well with me. And there's been a very mixed review, actually more fury than kind of like an actual as to how funny that is. But I'm just trying to understand what was the thought process behind that. I just don't. It doesn't, for me, it doesn't really click. And Ronaldo was in tears as well. He misses and he immediately begins to tear up after he missed that penalty, because he knows his team have to go into extra time, and he's brought down his team, so he's obviously upset. But to put that caption there, I don't know. It just doesn't sit right for me, especially from the BBC as well. So that is for me a big bit of a nutmeg from the BBC on that my side.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, know your audience. Like, you're not Barstool Sports. Like, that's a move that Barstool Sports would make, which I get it. It's funny. It's satire. Like, that's what you're here for with Barstool Sports. BBC, that's a little bit more like classy vibes, at least from my American perspective. So I would anticipate that it would just be a much cleaner type of news broadcasting of saying, he missed. That's a bummer. What does that look like? And maybe a pundit could say that. Maybe a pundit would say, oh, yeah, Missiano, whatever that stupid phrase was. I would get that. That would make more sense. But yeah, not from the BBC.
Cool.
All right, now for my nutmegged of the week. Copa America related. So in the U.S. men's national team game against Uruguay, there was a referee, and he's had some controversy because of other things he's done in his past. However, this was a wild situation, and I've had other referees like going out on social media explaining how this happened and how it was wrong. So there was a foul committed by a U.S. player against a Uruguayan player, and that foul had happened. The referee takes out a yellow card, raises up the yellow card to the U.S. player. However, Uruguay then takes the ball and just runs and plays. And then the referee drops the yellow card and then plays advantage, puts both of his hands up to play advantage. And Uruguay get an attacking chance out of it. Thankfully, the U.S. defense did not let them score. However, when a yellow card is brandished, that means the play is dead. So as soon as that yellow card pops out, or even if the referee is reaching for that yellow card and it starts to pull out of his pocket, that means instantly the play needs to be dead. You can't play advantage. You have to wait for the whistle to restart. That's why you have advantage. Advantage is used. So, hey, we see there's an attacking opportunity. You can continue to play on, and then I'll go back after the fact and then give the yellow card out to the player. That's how the situation normally works. However, it did not in this situation. He literally brought the yellow card out, raised it to the player, and then while yellow card still in hand, did the advantage sign and let your guy go on an attacking chance. Absolutely ridiculous. At this high of a level, how do you have a referee that does something of that nature? Like, come on, that is just a total nutmeg. Get some real referees in here. Of course, I'm a little salty because I don't think it was refereed appropriately that game because we lost anyway. Granted, it's the U.S.'s fault for not scoring and not getting past Panama the game before, but still just craziness that the refereeing is not doing simple things right at the Copa America of all tournaments. So quite a nutmeg for that referee. Not a fan.
It's not on those, especially in those sorts of tournaments when it's high level tournaments. Referee needs to be on point and things like that. I mean, that also makes sense now for me when Pulisic was like, go and celebrate with the Uruguayan fans. Like, it makes a little bit more. I get it now. I get it. It's as a USA player, you can imagine the annoyance of that having to go on and you end up still losing the game. So not good enough, and more needs to be done. Just from a Euro perspective, there's been a couple of errors in that which we could spend a whole episode on as well, so but we won't. On that note, we will end this episode. It's been a great one. It's been fully jam-packed. Lots of US and England rants, which has been, always nice to get out. So looking forward to the next one. Enjoy. Andrew, any final words?
No, nothing other than hit us up on Instagram, drop us a DM if you have an interesting take it or leave it for us to discuss, or even a nutmeg you'd want to drop in. That would be awesome. And that's where you can chat with us in between episodes too. We'll see you then, hopefully.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for listening. Take care.
Peace.